Disclaimer: the information shared in this episode is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Please consult your doctor, consultant, or qualified healthcare professional for your individual healthcare needs and before making any medical decisions.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast in partnership with Kidney Care UK, sharing faith, knowledge, hope, and love.
Hi and welcome to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. My name is Dee Moore and I am a kidney warrior. This podcast is dedicated to encourage, educate, and inspire as we explore all aspects of kidney disease, related chronic illnesses, and health. As part of Black History Month, we're celebrating the incredible heritage and flavours of African and Caribbean foods and exploring how these traditional dishes can be adapted for kidney health. This is part one of a two-part series, and today in part one, we'll be focusing on African foods, the rich flavours, the history, and how to make them kidney friendly. Today I'm joined by two amazing renal dietitians, Timmy and Tadala, who both contributed to Kidney Kitchen's African and Caribbean Recipes magazine. Hi and welcome to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. How are you doing today, Timmy and Tadala?
Thank you very much, Dee. Thank you for having me once again.
Hi, Dee. I am so excited. Thank you for having us. Really looking forward to our discussions.
Timmy, this is your second time on the podcast. We did two episodes together, episode 126 and 127, where we talked about 5 kidney-friendly foods and 5 foods to limit. So if you haven't checked out these episodes, please do check them out. So before we get into the cooking, I'd love to hear from you both about what does African food mean to you?
Right, so African food is simply the foods I grew up eating, the foods my mom cooked in the kitchen, we all ate together, share as part of a community. That's it. Yeah.
African foods for me, I don't know, when I think about African foods, I think of hearty meals, I think of family, I think of memories, all the time when you've got all your cousins round and everything. It's like a buzzing household. It's colors, it's spices, it's smells, it's flavors. It's all of these things rolled up into one. And I think a lot of people can identify when it comes to food, we really think of family. Anytime you go over to someone's house, it's always about food. You're told by your parents, don't be asking for food when you get to someone's house, but they will always offer you food no matter whatever you go to. So food is family, is community. It's and then African food is really hearty meals. You've got different types of spices, of course, in Africa. You've got different influences from different places. So African food, color, family, community, flavor. That's what I think African food is.
There's definitely a crossover there with the Caribbean because that's exactly what I think about when I think about Caribbean foods, family, flavors, spices, herbs, and definitely eating good and feeling good about the food too.
Yeah.
Food comas as well after eating so much. But yeah.
So how do you adapt the food to make it kidney friendly?
Absolutely. Taking from what Tadala said, most people don't tend to cook for themselves alone. African food is all about sharing. It's about love. And so most people would naturally not live alone or not cook alone for themselves. And so they're in a family, whether with cooking for their spouses or their children or the family members. So it's important that you are able to cook meals that everyone in the family can share with you, but also you cater to your kidney health. Now, simple things that we can do would be to adjust cooking methods. And I'll give an example. Now, naturally, most of the staple foods available in Africa or other parts of the world are quite, heavy root and tubers. For example, cassava, yam, potatoes. Those are usually the staple foods, which are, I wouldn't say unfortunately, but they're quite high in potassium. Now, Should we then stop taking this sort of foods because we've got kidney issues? Absolutely not. Simple change in your cooking method, like soaking or peeling the skin, and also, boiling in lots of water, help to significantly reduce the amount of potassium in this food. And so you can then continue to make that into fries or just mashed potatoes or any other thing you want to do with that. In addition to that, things like the storing methods, like freezing. We know evidence shows us that when you freeze some of those foods, including your vegetables, they help to significantly reduce the amount of the potassium in this food products, and so we can then enjoy that, getting the benefits that we want into our body. Other things like removing the skin of beans, for instance, even though we know it's a plant-based food and it's really good for us, it can be high in things like phosphate or potassium, but the simple method in removing the skin, soaking it for long hours, following a recipe to make things like moi moi in this recipe booklet is absolutely great. It's got good proteins and a lot of people would enjoy it. So it's all about changing the food processing methods. Also, important to note here is food portions. For example, I know one of the ingredients for jollof rice is tomatoes, and I think everyone, one of the first things is, don't eat bananas, don't eat tomatoes. But if you're using just one tomato or about 100 gram or 200 gram of tomatoes to make jollof rice that serves about 6 people, how much tomato are you then getting as one person in that one meal? So it's quite small, it's quite minimal. So I think it's quite important for people to understand that even though there might be ingredients that might be high in potassium or phosphate or most of those buzzwords that clinicians would say for you to limit, we don't eat ingredients, we eat proper food, and different things come into it. Okay, and usually you wouldn't sit down and finish all the meal that you cook. You would cook a rather significant large amount of food, and then you then portion that and then keep or give to your friends. So it's important for us to understand that our ethnic foods are absolutely great for us, even if we've got kidney issues. We just need to make some adjustment in terms of the cooking methods.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to know what adjustments to make. And another thing to highlight is there is no kidney diet. That doesn't exist. But what it is that we're trying to do is trying to make sure that we are having a healthy, balanced diet. Something that will help our kidneys thrive or do well or not harm them anymore in the environment that they're housed in, which is our body. So when we're talking about adapting the diet, sometimes we have to also look at what the cause of the kidney disease was. Was it high blood pressure? Was it a cardiovascular issue? Was it a genetic condition? Which, of course, there's some things we've got no control over. If your body an autoimmune disease and you can't do anything about that. But there are some conditions that if we can eat a diet that will help that medical condition, then it then again creates that good environment for our kidney to function and to thrive really well. So some of the things where we've talked about is perhaps looking at the fat content of things that we eat. And in our community, I know I've seen my mom go to the shop when she's buying the meat, the cuts of meat that we purchased, the meat that's got the streaks in it, shin is what you would normally go for, as opposed to going for something that's more red meat that doesn't have that extra white fat. But some people will say, but that fat is where the flavor is. And so you want to take those meats. And that's an area that I think in our communities, or when we talk about ethnic diets, that's definitely something that we need to look at. How can we reduce these saturated fats that are then going to affect our health? And another thing is salt. Now we use a lot of salt in our diet, and people sometimes think, well, I don't add the white stuff, but we use a lot of stock cubes that are high in salt, bouillon cubes that are high in salt, certain flavorings and seasonings that we would use, so that I'm just mindful not to mention any brand names, but you add so much of these things that are not necessarily the white stuff, or garlic salts even. And so it's just to be mindful that the sodium aspect is what's going to affect our blood pressure. And so we need to be mindful of that, because if your blood pressure is really high, then that's going to damage those really tiny sensitive blood vessels that you've got in your kidney, which then means that we start to lose function. And then the EGFR starts to go down, which is one of the markers that we use. So we need to be very mindful about salt, we need to be mindful about fat, and then what's actually caused the condition with the kidney disease, and target that and try and make sure that we're in a healthy parameter. And us as clinicians, we know what those parameters are, and we're able to translate that. And that's what we're going to be doing. And that's why we've got the recipe magazine, so people can actually understand and see visually, what does a portion size look like? Yeah. How much am I supposed to be using? What are the adaptations that I can actually use that make sense to me? And what are the ingredients that I am familiar with? Because a lot of the time, it depends on where you are in the country, will depend on the dietitian that you've got and their knowledge of the cultural foods. And we've just got to make sure we maneuver all of these things. But there are a lot of adaptations that we can make so that we can still have our cultural foods. It's not a case of, because you need to follow a healthy diet, forget about your culture, forget about those traditional meals. And that's really why we're doing this, isn't it? It's just to highlight the importance of keeping to our traditional foods, but making sure that they're kidney healthy and kidney friendly.
So when you mentioned about hidden salts as well, there's actually, from my knowledge, a lot of salt in seasonings. So how do you get around that to keep the flavour without losing the taste?
Well, I've actually been seeing a lot of spices. Okay, so it's all about using our herbs. And now when we use these seasonings, if you look at the ingredients, it has thyme, peppercorns, Cajun spice. It's got all of these things, but mishmashed, mixed all together for convenience. Now, it also then has salt. So we could still create those things ourselves, and you could gather all these spices and put them into a jar yourself, so for convenience, but you are not going to add that extra salt.
Right.
And then it's using these natural herbs and spices that you can utilize to still bring that flavor without that salt in there. I think that's what's important, isn't it? It's the spices that really give it the flavor. So yeah.
So you mentioned about portion sizes, which obviously is a very big thing. So obviously reducing down those portion sizes, reducing down on the potassium, but also another thing that can be very challenging for kidney patients, you know, speaking personally as well, is managing phosphate. So how do you get around managing phosphate?
Phosphate is quite an interesting one, because it's literally available in most foods. Any food that has got protein has got phosphate, whether plant-based, whether animal-based, it's got phosphate in it. And that is why I'm always very careful when I'm advising patients, because as much as we give general advice, the advice you should be getting as a patient should be tailored to your personal circumstance, based on what your blood result says. There are some people that have got a bit of a wiggle room because their phosphate levels are absolutely okay. Some people, they need to be really, really, really strict. Now, the first thing about phosphate is, we usually say processed foods are the first things we should try to cut down or eliminate, because the phosphate we get from those ones are phosphate additives, which the body absorbs much, much quicker compared to the phosphate that is embedded in, or that naturally occurs in foods. So it becomes a little bit difficult for the body to absorb that phosphate. But the ones that have been slapped on top of the food to preserve it, it's easier for the body to absorb that. So if we cut down processed foods, we have essentially reduced a huge amount of the phosphate that gets into our body. That's the first step. The second step is we then look into the sort of foods that phosphate naturally occurs in, and then see what we can do about them. For example, beans, it's got some phosphate as well, but the simple process of soaking and dehulling reduces some form of phosphate in these things. So it's not that you can have the foods that are high in phosphate at all, but it's all about, okay, what can I do? What sort of foods do I enjoy? What sort of foods do I eat often? For example, your eggs. You can still have some eggs, Well, maybe the egg yolk, you reduce that or you take that out. The white part is actually much more less in phosphate, and you can still get some form of proteins from that. So the tricky part is you need a lot of proteins, but you don't need a lot of phosphate. But most food that has protein has phosphate. So it's usually difficult to balance it. It's all about knowing what works for you and also your blood results. And thankfully we've got medications now that people can then use to bring down the phosphate levels, and that allows them a little bit of a leeway to enjoy different foods because they're putting their trust in the medications. But some people don't like the medications, and so we tend to scrutinize their diet really, really well to just bring down the phosphate levels.
Yeah, I think phosphate is an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's literally every single cell contains phosphate. Yeah. But like you said, it's not necessarily completely avoiding it. It's limiting things that are really high in it. And processed foods definitely would be something that we can remove or move to the side a little bit. So there's so much that we can look at when it comes to phosphate, and that's right through from stages 1 to stage 5 actually, because what we're finding now is that if you can still manage the amount of phosphate that you're having even earlier on, it's beneficial for you later on as well with kidney function. So I would say there's a lot of things to do with phosphate, but a lot to look into in the recipe book as well.
So I know today that you're cooking several dishes, and I'm really looking forward to tasting it. Yep. So what are you cooking today, and why have you chosen these dishes?
What are we cooking today? We are doing 2 full meals, so carbohydrate, vegetables and protein. We're doing one that's plant-based and one that is going to be animal-based. But chicken, very common and popular across the continent, so we're really looking forward to seeing how we make that and what seasoning and spices we use, as we mentioned before. And then another thing that we're also going to be doing is looking at a few sides here and there, plantain, some greens and some what other vegetables do we have in Africa? What is it that's really popular? What grows naturally? And I think those are the important things. Now, with the rice is one of the carbohydrates, and then cornmeal. So both of these very popular across Africa. And what we're looking at now mainly is sub-Saharan Africa. Now, I do know Africa has got over 53 countries. 54 countries in Africa, so we cannot represent everything in today's session, but what we are doing, like I said, is just making sure that we've got something that everybody from different countries knows of or can identify with. And that's the key thing, is to make sure people can identify with some of these meals. And representation, it matters so much to see something that, I cook that in my kitchen, and to be able to see that. So really, really looking forward to all of that.
And just to add, this meal that we're gonna be cooking today, we just lifted the recipes from the Kidney Kitchen African and Caribbean recipe booklet, and so people can literally just look into that, follow the recipes, and replicate these meals in their own homes as well, and see how it turns out. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to starting cooking, so let's go.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
So we're finally in the kitchen, and I want to give a special thank you to the British Dietetics Association for allowing us to use their kitchen and for gifting us with the ingredients. So, Timmy Tadala, what are you cooking first?
Right, so we are going to start off with chicken and jollof rice.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to do the chicken first. So we've got some natural herbs and spices. The chicken has been deskinned first to remove any visible excess fat. We've got some spring onions already chopped and diced over there. We've got some onions over there already chopped and diced. We've got some ginger and garlic, done well. We've got some, natural herbs and spices that we're going to mix and marinate with the chicken, and then we just leave it by the side to allow it marinate, and then move over to the jollof rice. Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to?
Okay.
Yeah?
I will start. I mean, the good thing about using our natural spices and herbs and ingredients is you actually bring out the flavor, the natural flavors of the food. So as we've mentioned all of these, just gonna.
So what herbs and spices are in there?
we've got mixed herbs. We've got some cayenne pepper. We've got ginger, garlic. We've got some black pepper as well, and some Chinese 5-spice.
Okay.
And then we'll also put a reduced salt soy sauce in here. So just making sure that we're still getting that coloring, but making sure that we're not getting too much salt. So follow the recipe.
You should be fine. Yeah, it should be easy to just follow the recipe and you get a really nice.
So my hands are washed. I'll just give that a good mix.
Yeah.
Really get
really
in there,
get
really
in.
mix it in.
Absolutely.
Really mix it in, and then you can make sure that we leave it, of course, on the side.
Do you want to add some of those onions as well?
Yeah. Pop that in there, and then we can leave that on the side just to marinate for some time.
Just a little bit should be fine.
Yep.
Fine. And then do you want the spring onions
Yes,
as well?
please.
So you just do
There
all
we
the-
go. And that gives it such a pretty pop of color as well.
Absolutely.
You know, we're all about the visuals.
It smells amazing as well.
Yeah. It's all of those herbs coming together.
It's true what they say, you eat with your eyes, so it's gotta be colorful.
Yes. So we'll just cover this with some cling film and put that into the fridge just for some time to marinate.
Okay.
So now we're going to do the jollof rice. I wanted to actually kind of talk about, there's a bit of rivalry when it comes to jollof rice.
I know.
So without being controversial,
Yep.
let's clear up a few misconceptions about jollof rice.
Okay. Nigerian jollof rice is the best. End of story. I'm just kidding. I think different areas, different ethnic groups within West Africa have different ways of cooking jollof rice. And an interesting fact is, it actually originated amongst the Wolof ethnic group in some part of Senegal and some part of Guinea. That's where we know that the jollof rice originated from. And the Nigerians, the Ghanaians, the Senegalese have different ways of cooking jollof rice. Ultimately, it's jollof rice. It brings us all together. Even though we fight about it, but it's one thing that brings us all together. Yeah.
Okay, so with jollof rice, there's obviously going to be some tomatoes in there. So I'm just going to pop that all into the blender. So at the moment, we're going to be making our sauce. And then we'll also have some peppers over here. So we've got some sweet pointed peppers and some bell peppers as well. So that will really give us that red color that we want. But Timmy, I think there was something that you had mentioned earlier on about tomatoes not actually being in the original jollof.
That is actually true. The jollof dish, the traditional name is the one pot dish, where interestingly, tomatoes isn't part of the recipe. It's rice, some vegetables, and fish. So I think it was the Portuguese who actually introduced tomatoes to be part of the recipe. So people have been cooking this dish for centuries without even adding tomatoes. So people can play around with it, but still the same. If you had some tomatoes, as long as it's canned, it brings down the level of potassium in it. And as well, when you then make the dish up itself, how many servings are you making out of it, and then how many tomatoes have you used? Those sort of things are the things I would say people should consider. And yeah, you should be fine.
Okay, so we're going to give it a whiz in here just to get that smooth consistency, and then we'll add it to the rest of the dish. So let's go.
Turn it up.
Let me make this small consistency. Is that smooth enough? Yeah, that should be fine. Once it's smooth, are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna toggle this off. Yeah, and
Show what the consistency is.
as long as there are no bits. Oops. Yeah, this looks really nice and smooth. There are no bits to it. As long as it's fine, then we are good.
Okay, no, that's it.
Oh, the smell, I like it.
You've blended all the ingredients, and now we get on to the cooking part.
Yes.
Very true, very true. We would start with the olive oil or whatever oil you've got, but usually we would encourage either sunflower oil, olive oil. Just a little bit, 2 tablespoons into the pot, and then whilst you allow that simmer up. Next thing would be to add some onions, and then once you add the onions, both the regular onions and the spring onions, once the oil is really hot, and then you continue to cook that on low heat. You stir the onions until it becomes crispy, really crispy, and then it gets brown. Then we add the tomato puree, just as small as possible, to just give it that red flavor. And then you had some mixed spices, the herbs, to just the most important part of jollof rice is getting the base right, and this is the base. So as much as you want it to be as delicious as the base has to be, so mix all the herbs, all the natural herbs, all the onions, everything that you need, get it right at this point. The rest is just parboil rice into it, just cooking rice. As long as you get the base right, that is absolutely golden. So we add some onions into that here, and as you caramelize the onions with the oil, the flavor actually gets into the rice itself, gives the jollof rice the proper. Some people actually put all of this into the oven and then let it simmer for about 20 minutes to just give it that smoky feeling. Some people prefer it, some but different people different ways. Ultimately we're going to the same destination. Okay, yeah, so we give that a good stir. Absolutely. Do you want to add the spring onions now? Okay, so we add the spring onions while we continue to stir, and we allow the oil to caramelize all the onions, let the flavor come out really well. And at this point we can then begin to add our mixed herbs. We've got some peppers as well here. So all of the spices that you've got absolutely added at this point, you allow the oil, soak it into it. The combination itself, you begin to get the aroma. You don't really even need any extra artificial spices or anything like that.
No. So what I wanted to ask you is, how is this recipe different to the ordinary or the normal, in speech marks, jollof rice recipe? Because I mean, there's loads of tomatoes still there, so how is it different?
The major reason here is, first, we're using the canned tomato, which in itself, the canning process will reduce the potassium level.
Okay.
Most of the time people would prefer to use fresh tomatoes, and in fact some people would then slice some tomatoes on the jollof rice towards the end. We probably won't do that because we want to reduce the amount of potassium in this recipe. So the canned tomato is absolutely fine. Yes, I know we're still using some tomato purees, but in small quantity as possible. Also, you can see we have reduced the amount of oil that we're using, and also all of the spices are natural spices rather than the regular jollof mix that most people would usually buy that has got extra salt and extra things in them.
Because we're not doing like an exact step-by-step of what we're doing, it's just some of the highlights of what would be happening.
Right.
Only because obviously we're used to cooking in big pots when we're at home, so this recipe has been condensed down, which is why we will have a lot of tomatoes still left over, because we're cooking a smaller portion. So we still have to be mindful about how much potassium we're actually using. So you'd reduce down your tomato puree, and then you would add in your mixture.
That should be fine. That's okay.
And then just give that a stir. And then what we would do is would cover it just to get that tomato to cook. Otherwise you just get it tasting like tomatoes.
Too sweet, and you don't want that sweet taste. You want something properly cooked. And like I said earlier, the base is the most important thing. If you get this right, the rest is just adding parboiled rice, and you cover it and you allow it to slow cook and slow eat. That's it. This is the most important bit. You get it right, you have a really nice jollof rice.
we'll just cover that for some time and leave it to just simmer and let it cook for a bit.
So what do we have here?
Okay, so this is the plant-based option that we have here, and we've got some kidney beans. So we've used a tinned variety of kidney beans. So of course, as we mentioned earlier with the tomatoes, this has also been, the canning process helps to reduce the amount of potassium in there. So we've lost some of the potassium. It'll also help us to cook a little bit quicker.
Yes, that's
well,
good.
Which is really good, but we still get that plant-based protein and that fiber, which is very important. So what we've done is, although it's canned, we've made sure we've rinsed it, we've washed it, we've gotten rid of some of that fluid, because there's going to be some potassium in that water. So we've rinsed it and it's clean, and so we've got that ready. So again, fiber for us, good for our gut microbiome, absolutely amazing. And then again, we're going to be using our natural herbs and spices. So we've got some ground coriander, we've got some thyme, some garlic. Over there we've got some turmeric and a small amount of tomato puree. So we still are using that tomato puree in there, but again, a smaller portion than what normally would be in the recipe for what other people would be using. And then we've got some tomato as well, because we definitely cannot do without that in this dish. Otherwise, it doesn't have that traditional flavor that it has. And then there's another thing as well, because some people have thought that maybe this is quite high potassium, because I've mentioned a lot of things that are traditionally high potassium. You've got your kidney beans. Guess what I'm putting in there as well? Coconut milk as well.
Okay.
Yes. So phosphate, potassium, but again, it's all about portion size and how much ultimately you're going to have. Now, all the recipes in the magazine have been checked for the content of potassium and phosphate. So if it has a tick on it and it says low potassium, then it's low potassium.
Definitely.
And this is a low potassium dish, but I cannot stress enough that you must follow the recipe. I know a lot of the time it's very hard for us to follow recipes. When I asked my mom when we were trying to do the magazine, what things do we need to put in? She's like, you just put in salt, you just put in this. And I'm like, I need specific measurements. So I know there can be that tendency to do that. But initially, just whilst you're getting into the swing of things, make sure that you're following the recipe along with the portion sizes as well. Okay, so we've got our hot plate. Now we're going to put in some oil. All right, so now we've added the oil. What we're going to do is add in our spices. So we'll put in some onions. Put in some onions. It's a big piece over there. Put in some onions. Give that a stir. Add in our garlic and tomato puree, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a small amount. And we'll leave the coriander for a little bit later.
Why do you do that?
It's just because of the flavors. So just for now, we just want to make sure that we can just bring down the onions and the garlic just to infuse the flavors, and then the turmeric comes in a little bit later. Just
straight away, I'm getting the aroma really.
I think usually for most dishes, you would put the onions in it in the boiling oil to just, caramelize it a little bit, bring out the flavor. I think that's the secret weapon our mothers used to use back in the days to limit the amount of salt or extra seasonings they put in their food. Yeah, it works.
So we will add some stock cube, but for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of water, just so that we can bring and just soften those tomatoes that we've added in there. And then we'll put that to the side and let that cook and just cover that. And then we'll add our beans and our spices and coconut once these have cooked a little bit.
So I noticed that you're using fresh tomatoes with this. So how are you reducing the potassium overall?
Because we're only using, in the whole recipe, it's 2 tomatoes, so a very small portion of tomatoes for what is going to be the portions that's going to be divided by everybody. So It's a smaller amount that we're using, and it's also going to be shared between the whole family.
And probably a smaller size tomato rather than a big size tomato, isn't it?
Well, in this case, yes, I definitely did use a smaller tomato. Yeah, so we'll cover that and leave that to set, and then we can add the rice to the jollof rice.
Absolutely.
And then we can
We just
continue
cover
with that.
yeah, and then that's simmers.
Perfect.
Okay, Timmy, so what are we doing now?
So, you remember the base that we made? That was the most important part. And I simply had a parboiled rice into it, added water to just cover it. So usually the recipe would say 250 grams of rice and then 1 cup of water to just cover it. You don't want to add too much water, else your rice is going to be soggy. So you want a little bit of amount of water to cover the rice, and you cook on slow heat and leave it to get softened. That's it. So we can cover this and then just regularly check and make sure there's enough water. You don't want your rice getting burnt. Jollof rice doesn't taste well when it's too burnt. You add some water up until it gets soft, and voila. So we better go check up on the chicken. So yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So I see that you've added foil. What's the purpose of that?
Right, the trick behind this is we're cooking the rice on slow heat, and we've added just a small amount of water because we don't want the rice to become really soggy. And so the idea is to seal off the lid with this tin foil to just make sure that we cook the rice slowly with the steam rather than lots and lots of water. We want to retain all of the flavor from all the spices that we've added to the rice. So I'm going to open this and then see how our rice is doing. Right. Okay, so it's going to come up gently. Ooh, so that's the smoke I'm talking about. You want to trap that in the rice to just make sure that. Okay, and then you give your rice a little bit of a stir. You don't want to leave it too long because you don't want it to get burnt. And then gently. The trick is to only turn at the end. If you turn really, really prematurely, the rice is going to burn.
Okay.
So cover it, slow it with a tin foil, leave it for 10-15 minutes, make the rice a little bit soft. Then you can then turn. At this point, I expect it is done. But if it is still a bit hard, you can still add some amount of water. But just make sure you keep checking it so you don't get your rice burnt. And yes, this is looking really nice, and I can feel the aroma. Can you feel it?
Oh yeah, I can
Yeah.
definitely
It
smell
smells good. I mean, we've definitely given the whole offices a good smell of what we're doing.
I'm sure everyone is hungry now. It's way past lunchtime, so. Oh, nice. This
Okay.
is. And you don't want smushy or soggy jollof rice. You want the rice to still be really, really standing, or you want individual rice to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So shall we just swap over? I'm mindful of my tomatoes.
Okay. Let me just cover this up, and then this is all done. We're just gonna keep it on the cooker to just allow the heat to just keep it there, and we're ready. When you guys are hungry, let me dish out some.
I'm hungry now.
Yes, me too.
Okay, let's put it to the side.
Tomatoes have reduced down.
Okay.
You can have a look and see. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add the remainder of our spices to that. And then add a little bit of the stock cube. So again, we're using a stock cube, but we're using a reduced salt stock cube at this time. But you can also purchase a very low salt stock cube that doesn't have any salt in it actually. I found some in the supermarket the other day, and I was quite impressed because there was one that was dominating the market, but now there seems to be a lot more that are no salt added, which is
Okay.
really, really good. So I'm going to add that stock cube with some water in there just so that it can give us a little bit of fluid. Stir that in. And this extra fluid actually helps so that we've got a little bit of a sauce when we're eating our pap with, because that's what's very, very important. So here's a little bit of that coconut milk as well. So again, we need to make sure that we're following the recipe for portion sizes. Give that a stir. And then I'm going to add our beans So our beans have been strained. And then we're going to leave that for some time just so that it can reduce again and thicken. Our food never takes 10 minutes, 20 minutes to cook. It's all about leaving it so that the juices can really get in there. So I'll give you a little look and see. Now normally you might have a deeper red color, but that's also because of the tomato puree and the amount of tomatoes you would use. But we're not using that much tomato puree in our dish, which is why the color is not as red and as deep. But I'm hoping with the spices and the herbs that we've used, we still get the same intense flavor. So once again, we'll put that aside to rest and move on to the next dish, which is an accompaniment, and that's our greens, our green vegetables.
That's right.
So we'll put this to the side and just give it some time. So now that our beans are cooking and they're just simmering down, what we're going to do is we're going to start onto our greens. So at the beginning we said that we were going to be doing a meal with the plant-based protein, and so this is the vegetable component of that meal, and what we're using is greens. Now as a child, I remember my mom sending me out to go and pick green leaves from the garden and bring them in, and literally organic, fresh. It was amazing. So I'd go, I wasn't allowed to pick more than one leaf at a time from each stem. So I'd have to go and pick one. And it was quite an activity for me. Anyway, I don't know, maybe she just wanted me out the kitchen or something, give me something to do, keep me busy, but that's what I had to do. And greens, actually, with our collards, they're not very high in potassium, unlike their sibling spinach. So they are quite a good one. But if you did want to then reduce the potassium that you're having even further, what you could do is go for cabbage, because that has even less potassium in it. So for that reason, this is just going to be steamed. We're not going to pre-boil to get rid of any potassium, because it's not deemed a high potassium vegetable. So just so that we can just saute it a little bit, once again, just a little bit of oil in the pot, and again a little bit of oil. Now I am a fan, I think everything's got to have onions in it, and it appears that my spoon has gone walkies.
There you go.
Thank you. So just give that a whirl so that there's enough oil in the pot, and then just add a little bit of those onions, again just for that flavor, just so that it can get into that oil a little bit. So we just give it a little bit of time just so that they can soften and release some of that flavor that we want. And as I said, our collards, those will then go into the pot and saute, and lovely, nice and simple. I think that's literally the easiest dish that we can do. It's so easy. Literally chop really finely, pop that in there, leave it to cook, and then when it's a little bit soft, then it's taken off the stove.
Is there any history around why collards are used?
I know in America, again, it's a cheap vegetable to have. Grows easily, so quite accessible to a lot of people. But another thing, what I found was with your leaves, green leaves, if you were working on a plantation or if you were working somewhere and the pumpkin was something that everybody would take and sell the pumpkin, but you can still use the leaves, and we would use the leaves. So you've got different types of leaves. We've got so many different green vegetables. Ugu leaves, which are more West African. I remember in our garden, we'd have a hedge around our house, and my mum would always let the old ladies come and pick some of the leaves off there, and they would use that to cook something as well.
Okay.
And so you've got jute leaves, you've got so many different things that you can pick off that are so nutritious as well. So our greens are very, very nutritious, and so it's really important to incorporate them in the diet, but have different ones. So you'd have amaranth. I think that's quite popular even in Asia. So it's the leftovers of what sometimes people wouldn't want, but you can still eat them, and they're very nutritious. So yeah, as we said earlier, you eat with your eyes, and I think the green color next to the kidney beans looks really pretty. So there you have it. We'll give that some time.
and just leave that to cook. And we move on to the next bit, which is the sadza, is what we call it in Zimbabwe, pap in South Africa, ugali, Morocco in Botswana. So many different names for the same thing.
In Nigeria, they call it ogi.
Ogi.
Yeah.
So onto the cornmeal, and yeah, let's take it from there.
So, Tadala, Timmy, we've come to my favourite part of this, and that is the tasting. Can you see I'm like really excited about this?
There you go.
So, what do you want me to try first?
Okay, I'd say let's try the jollof because we made that first. So
Okay.
let's go over there and then see. So that's more of our West African dish. Let's see, West African and some Central. Yes,
Okay,
let's try.
I'm excited. I can see the colours. I can smell the nice aroma. So let me try the flavours.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, sorry. I have to remember I'm on camera here. Like, normally it's an audio only podcast, so I don't have to worry. But amazing, absolutely
Great.
fantastic.
And you can see here, we did a little bit of a corso with the carrots and the cabbage and some sweet corn there and a little bit of a dressing. But what you can see is we didn't add any of the mayonnaise or anything like that, just because we're mindful calorie-wise as well, but just trying to keep it as fresh and vibrant as possible. So you've got those natural flavors coming in there. And you're going to have some of the chicken.
You don't have to tell me twice. Now, I would normally eat. Is it okay if I try with my
Yeah.
hands?
Just
So
go for
I'm
it,
just
go for
getting
it.
in there.
Yeah. I'm jealous.
We're all staring at her like,
Okay, I'm ready to go. I have to sit down.
No, there's still one more for you.
I don't need anything. I'm good with that. Like, wow, amazing.
Okay.
The flavour, the spice, the flavourings. It's amazing how you've reduced the salt, but I don't miss the salt at all.
Wow. That's really good. That's really good. Nice one, Timmy.
Yeah.
Nice one. Nice
you.
one.
Fantastic.
That recipe really pulled through. Okay. Well, now we move over to East and Southern Africa with our cornmeal. And although, yes, Timmy, you were saying it's maize, but it's not the way that you in West Africa would normally do that
Absolutely.
cornmeal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's still maize, and then we can make different meals out of it, but
Yeah.
it's still maize. That's all that's important.
So for this one, no need for cutlery.
Okay.
So what we would do is you'd plate it, and then a family member would go around and everybody would wash their hands. So you'd wash your hands in the water. We've got a jug so you can pour the water in as you're washing your hands, just so that it's hygienic. So you dip your hands in there, give yourself a little bit of water. Most of the time people won't dry their hands, only because when your hands are a little bit wet, you can then pull away the cornmeal a lot easier. So if I just show you what you're supposed to do. So you would pull it away, then you can, some people would roll it into a ball,
Okay.
or you can create a little bit of a dent in there, just so that you can scoop up a little bit more of the soup,
Okay.
and then you'd pop that into your mouth. So I'll wait for you to do the honors. You have a little bit.
Okay. Just to say, I have washed my hands, but shall I still
Yeah.
take a little bit of water? So scooping this.
Careful.
So I'm not as there we go. Okay. Full of flavour. And as I said before, like you just smell that sweet aroma, the spices. Yeah. Really, really
And then our
nice.
greens, our collard greens, are over
So
there.
can I try that then?
Yeah.
Try. Oh dear.
So
I'm gonna
that's
be really
all
messy with
natural.
this.
We didn't add any spices to that. That's all just the collards.
Okay. Do you know what? Normally with vegetables you'd add a bit of butter or you'd add a bit of salt, but actually you really don't need it.
No.
It tastes great.
Yeah. That's great. So there we have east, southern, east, and over on the west side. So we've done it. Sub-Saharan Africa.
And you can cook really, really nice recipes without, too much salt, without too much bouillon cubes, just the normal recipes that you used to, but also adapted in a way that suits your kidneys. So, yeah, go for it. Check out the recipe booklet and try as many recipes as you can.
So a special thank you to Tadala, a special thank you to Timmy, and a thank you to Roger and Trevor, who are in the background, who have made all of this possible in terms of the filming and the sound. Thank you so much for watching Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. We really hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned more about how traditional African foods can be both delicious and kidney friendly. We'd love for you to try some of the recipes at home and let us know how you get on. Share with us what you've cooked or tell us which dish you enjoyed the most in the comments below. If you found this episode inspiring, please give it a thumbs up, comment, share it with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you'll never miss a new episode. You can also listen to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and of course, right here on YouTube. Until next time, take care and choose to live.
Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast in partnership with Kidney Care UK, sharing faith, knowledge, hope, and love.